Hey guys, this is Dominique with Sweet Chef Pastries. I'm really excited because Fat Tuesday is coming up and that means king cake, right? I have never had king cake, like a traditional one, honestly just the grocery store kind. My dad is actually from Louisiana and my mom had requested a king cake, but when he visited, he did not bring one back home. So I found a recipe online by Amy Nash. And so it's a king cake that has a brioche base. So I'm really excited to make it and eat it, of course. But wish me luck because this is the very first time that I will be making a king cake. So the king cake represents the three wise men. So besides king cake, it could be called Three Kings cake. But it represents the wise men bringing gifts to baby Jesus. So after it is made, a lot of times they put a little baby in the product and then, you know, yay if you find the baby Jesus. I'm not baking one in mine. Okay, I have mise en place, which means everything in its place. You want to make sure all your ingredients are weighed and measured before you start working, and that way you don't run into issues like, oh, I don't have enough of this or whatnot, and everything is ready to go. Okay, so per this recipe, we've got 1 cup of milk, and then she uses a 1/4 cup of unsalted butter. Salted butter. I like to use unsalted butter. I've got that in the microwave warming up right now so that the butter melts into the milk. And then we've got 1.5 teaspoons of salt. We have 2/3 cup of warm water. Got it says 1/2 cup of granulated sugar divided, but I'm actually going to put them together. So she is using dry active yeast. I like to use instant, so I'm doing 0.75 or 3/4 of a tablespoon versus the 1 tablespoon of dry active yeast. We've got 2 large eggs that are beaten, and then I put the 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract in it. And then I've got about 5.5 cups of all-purpose flour ready to go. Now that our milk and our butter has cooled enough, we're going to add it to the bowl. We've got our warm water, got our sugar, got our eggs, and then the yeast, I'm going to actually add a little bit with the flour. So I'm going to take 1 cup of flour and put that in the bowl. Now this has you adding the flour slowly. I like to add most of mine initially. And then I'll reserve just probably like 1 cup or 1/2 cup at the end to make sure that our dough is not too dry. We've got a little bit of flour there. And then I put the yeast on top. You don't want the salt directly coming in contact with yeast, or that can kill the yeast as well. So you have to be careful about that. You don't want your water too hot because the yeast can die. About 140 degrees is when your yeast can die off. So you just want to make sure that your water's not too hot when you put it in there. So about 120 degrees would be good. So then we've got, normally if you're using active dry yeast, you're going to combine your water and then you've got some of the sugar to feed the yeast. Then you're going to let it sit till it's foamy. But since we are using instant yeast, then we can kind of skip that whole period there. I did pick this recipe because she had a 5-star rating. So I'm really excited to try it. But obviously I'm a pastry chef, so I like to kind of use the ingredients I have and some of the methods that I'm accustomed. So I wouldn't say this is a traditional brioche recipe because usually traditional brioche recipes, you add softened butter to the end of your mixture versus melting it and pouring it at the beginning. So that is a quicker way of making, I guess we can call it a quick brioche recipe. But regardless, I'm sure it's going to be delicious and nice and buttery. So I have a dough hook, which is good for making doughs. And then I have my KitchenAid here, started on low speed, making sure that it comes together. So this is called the shaggy stage. We haven't developed gluten yet. So as you can see, it still looks really sticky. So it hasn't formed into a ball. I mean, you still have to mix it for a little bit, but we're going to add a little bit more flour to that. And once we see that we have enough flour and the dough doesn't seem to be as wet, then we can put up the speed to medium. And then this is the part where we want to really develop that gluten so that it turns out into a really nice dough. How can you tell if it's too sticky? You just stick your hand in there and you can see it. It's just sticking. So we definitely need more. So I added the rest of my flour. So we're at 5.5 cups of all-purpose flour. So this is a softer dough we're looking for, so that's why we're not using bread flour for it. Now it is still going to be a little sticky, but you just don't want it overly sticky to where you can't handle it. So I'm putting it on medium speed, and we're probably going to go for 8 to 10 minutes. It just depends on your mixer. And as you can see, that the bottom, just kind of spreading it out. And this is also how you know if you need more flour. So sometimes it just depends on your water ratio, your liquid ratio, the temperature. If you're in a real bakery, you would be taking, the temperature of the room, and there's a formula that you normally do, temperature of the water, all of that stuff. But since we're just at home, we're just kind of doing it a quick way. But if you feel like when you're mixing it, it's not getting anywhere, it's not forming into solid, lump, and it's just kind of going around and it's spread out like that, you can add more flour until you feel like it comes together like a ball. You've added more flour, and this is what it looks like when it's starting to come into a ball. So this is very exciting. Our dough is almost all the way formed. It's got a little tackiness to it, but it's not overly sticky to where you can handle it. And you're going to take, so when we say we're looking for a window, this is just to test whether this is to test whether the gluten has developed enough. So you take a piece of dough and you slowly stretch it. And you should see some light forming through it, and it shouldn't rip easily. If it does rip, that means you need to develop some more gluten. But you should stretch it quite a bit before it gets to that ripping point. Just going to put a little bit of flour on our bench. Give it a little dusting, that's what we like to call it. And we've got our bowl here, or you can use the bowl that your flour was in. But basically, we are going to spray the bowl, or you can lightly oil it. That way it doesn't stick. So I'm using a little pan spray. Spray inside my bowl. As you can see, this dough is nice, soft. And we're going to put it inside the bowl, and then I'm going to do plastic wrap on top. And then we are going to let it rise for a couple hours until it's double in size. It is February, so what I'm doing is I'm turning on the oven, and I'm going to put it in the little drawer underneath the oven. That's if it fits in this bowl. If not, then I'll put it in a smaller bowl. But regardless, I'm going to turn on the oven and kind of use the heat from the oven to kind of help this rise. So you can put the plastic wrap and stick it on top of the oven, or if your bowl is smaller, you can put it in the drawer underneath the oven. So you're going to do some plastic wrap. We don't want our dough to dry out, and that is the reason why you put plastic wrap, to cover it. And also, it retains the heat in a little bit, the warmth, for your yeast to multiply and rise in there. So next, we're going to let it rise for about 1 to 2 hours until it's double. It may take longer, so we will see. So while your dough is rising, you can actually make the filling. So I kind of want to try the cinnamon and the cream cheese, and I have the ingredients for both, so I would like to try that. All right, we're doing cinnamon filling, and I want to try the cream cheese filling. So for the cinnamon filling, she's got 2/3 cup brown sugar, 1/3 cup granulated sugar, 1/2 cup all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons ground cinnamon, and 4 tablespoons of melted butter. So we're going to put that melted butter in there. And we're going to give it a nice mix. Mix it on low speed. So it's combined. And this recipe is for makes 2 king cakes. So this filling is for 2 king cakes, but if you want to do cream cheese and you want to do the cinnamon, you can half this recipe and half the cream cheese recipe. That way you have 1 for one and 1 for the other. All right, for the cream cheese filling, we have 8 ounces of cream cheese, 2 cups powdered sugar, 2 tablespoons butter. I like to use unsalted again. She uses salted, 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. It is softened, and we're just going to pulse it, which means just a quick mix first so that everything doesn't go splashing around everywhere. Now we're going to mix it till it comes together and is smooth. Over here, I've got the ingredients for the glaze. You can make that kind of at the last minute. Do it ahead of time, make sure you cover it up. But here, it's 2 cups of powdered sugar, 3 tablespoons of milk, 1 tablespoon of butter. Like I said, you could use salted like she does or unsalted like I do. With this melted butter, 1 teaspoon lemon juice, and 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. We're going to whisk it together until a glaze forms. Back over here is our cream cheese filling, and it is nice and smooth. And here you go. The glaze is kind of like a thicker, not that liquidy glaze consistency. It's a little bit on the thicker side, so it's good so that you can spread it on. And I'm sure if you put it on while it's warm, it will melt on the dough nicely. The dough is ready to handle, so I've prepped 2 half sheet pans with parchment paper. Our dough has risen double in size, and I poked a little belly button in there. Check it. So I'm turning it over onto my floured surface. Our dough is nice and fluffy and warm. It did take actually double the amount of time than 2 hours. I kneaded the dough a little bit just to expel some of the gas inside. And now I'm going to divide it into 2 pieces. I am just eyeballing it for this purpose, but if you want to be accurate, you can get a baker's scale and you can weigh the whole thing and divide it that way. At this point, you can pre-shape it while you are working with 1 piece of dough, and this allows the gluten to relax a little bit. Since our final shape will be rectangular, I am spreading it just to kind of help it out a little bit. I've pre-shaped both of my pieces. This recipe actually has you rolling it right away. I personally, for bread, like to let it relax a little bit for about 10 to 15 minutes, and that helps the gluten not be overworked and shrink on you when you are rolling it. So that is common practice when you are working with breads to shape it, and like I said, when you have a lot of bread, you can actually pre-shape it, and by the time you get back to your first piece that you started working with, then all the other ones will be ready to work with. Gluten is like a muscle, so you need to let it relax, otherwise it'll be tight, hence the shrinkage when you roll it. So this recipe has you rolling it for about 10 inches by 16, I believe. I decided to roll it 12 by 20 just to give it a little bit more length. And I rolled it to about 1/8 of an inch. thick. And make sure you are picking your dough up while you are rolling it to avoid it sticking to the table, even if you have flour on it. So this piece rolled out fairly nicely. You want it to be as rectangular as possible. I am going to set it aside while I work with the other piece. The best way to transport dough is to fold it in half, and then you can open it back up that way. So you've heard me use the term pre-shaping a couple times, and you're probably like, what the heck is that? So pre-shaping basically is the initial shape of your dough. So let's say you have a round loaf, then you might want to do round, or you have rolls. If you're doing something that's more of a longer cylindrical shape, then you might want to do an oblong shape, and that way it makes it a little bit easier to roll it to your final shape. And that's a lot of times what pre-shaping is. And like I said, it also allows time for the dough to relax. So if you're you have a whole bunch of rolls that you're making, like 30 rolls, then you might weigh all of them to about 1.5 to 2 ounces, and then you will roll them into balls essentially. You start with one, and then you keep on doing that for all of them, and by the time you're done doing that and you get to the first one will be ready to shape into something else. So you might need to make it into a knot roll or something, or maybe you are just doing round rolls and you can just put them directly on the pan with parchment paper or something like that. So that's what I mean by pre-shaping. So this is the second one. As you can see, this one is not rolling out as great as the first one. It is shrinking up on me a little bit. So I am definitely going to let it relax, see how it shrinks. This dough is ready to work with, and it is the size I want it to be. Nice and rectangular, and it's, like I said, 1/8 of an inch thick. So we are going to cut it down the middle lengthwise, and that way we have 2 pieces of dough versus just 1 piece. So I have a pastry wheel. Some people call this a pizza cutter. A pizza cutter is a little bit larger, but in school we were taught that this was a pastry wheel because it is smaller. So eyeball it, or you can measure it and cut it lengthwise down the middle so that you have your 2 rectangular pieces now, and that would be for 1 king cake. All right, the fun part, adding the fillings. So I've got my cinnamon filling. Remember that the full recipe is for 2 king cakes, so if you're only just doing it for 1, you can do it half the amount of the recipe. I just did the full amount because that's the first time I made it, and at this point I don't know if I want to put some cinnamon with the cream cheese. I probably will, because I have some extra. Normally for like cinnamon rolls and stuff, you would brush melted butter on first, and that way your filling adheres a little bit better. I think the next go around, that's what I'm gonna do. And you can't go wrong with a little bit more butter. I think it adds great flavor, and like I said, it helps the filling stay in. So what I'm gonna do is just pat it down a little bit, spread it, and then I'm gonna take a little bit of the excess off, and that way I don't have too many issues when I'm trying to roll it out, although I'm sure without the butter having it stick to it, there might just be a few issues there with them falling out, which is okay because I'll just roll it in there regardless. So we're ready to roll. So when you roll the dough, you want to basically pinch, pull, and tuck your dough. I do that especially at the beginning. That way it ensures that it is nice and tight, because when you do cut it, you will see gaps of dough and filling if your roll is not tight when you are rolling it. So that is the biggest mistake some people do. They don't make it nice and tight, but we're essentially rolling it into a nice long cylindrical shape like a cinnamon roll. And of course, since we don't have that melted butter, some of our filling is going to spill out, but that is okay because some of it will stick to the outside of the dough. So that is not a big deal, at least for me. All right, now that we have our 2 cylinders rolled up, we can braid them together. So I usually basically pinch one end And then you want, normally the seam side is down. If you are having issues with your filling spilling out and the seam side is down, you can have it go up. That is perfectly fine in this situation. Like I said, if we have that melted butter on the inside, then it probably will have less filling spilling out like that. But I'm just going to roll it in some of that extra filling, and also you can take the excess and put it back into the bowl and use it for the next king cake, so it's not like you are actually wasting it. So I'm twisting it into just a 2-strand braid. Now we have our unicorn horn is what I call it. But now I'm going to roll it a little bit in our excess filling, and then I am going to put it on our prepared pan. So when you do put it on the prepared pan, at this point you can shape it while it's on the pan. That probably will be easier than trying to make the shape while it is on the bench. So that is preference. I'm just showing you that I'm probably going to do an oval shape for. So when you get to the bottom or the end, you want to pinch it together, and that way when it bakes, the seam doesn't just pop open and then you don't have an actual, you know, one loaf of king cake. It'll be split. So you got to make sure you pinch those ends closed. I've transferred it to my pan, and I'm just, for this one, like I said, I'm going to try an oval shape to see how I like that one. And it's going to be ready to proof. So now for the second filling, I'm going to use this cream cheese filling. This is probably going to taste so delicious. I'm spreading it with my offset spatula, or baby offset is what we like to call it. And it just makes it a lot easier to spread your filling onto your dough. It's also used for cake decoration as well, so it's got so many different uses. But be generous with that cream cheese filling that you are spreading, and that way everybody's happy and they get some nice flavor in their king cake. So I will be taking that leftover cinnamon filling as well, and I will add it to this. There are other variations of king cake. So they have strawberry, blueberry, cherry flavor. So there's different possibilities. And I think other people are actually doing savory fillings as well. So that's probably really exciting. So if I ever make it down to New Orleans, I definitely would love to try different king cake. So here is my cinnamon filling that's left over from my last one. And I'm just going to sprinkle it generously on each dough. And then we will be ready to roll this one up, just like the last one. All right, here we go again. Pinch, tuck, and roll. Pinch, tuck, and roll. And get those seams nice and tight. Get that roll nice and tight. Get it wrapped around that filling, and that way we have a nice and tight cylindrical roll. Takes a little bit of practice. Once you get it, get it. And I'm going to do it with the other side as well. And I'm doing it from the opposite end, that way you can kind of see what it looks like from your view. Can you imagine making like a bakery that makes like hundreds of these? They are professional. You probably do it 10 times faster than I'm showing you, of course. Right, we've got our 2 cylinders right there. Now we are ready to do our 2-strand braid. Once again, pinch the end. This one, as you notice, is twisting a lot better than the other one, just because that filling is not going everywhere and spilling out. It's got something to stick to. So we've got our unicorn horn again. We're ready to shape it. All right, I've lifted it up onto my prepared pan. This one is a little bit stubbier than the last one, so I'm going to make it a round one. And then I'm going to pinch the ends closed once again. And then that way it is ready for proofing. So normally if you have a proof box, then it only takes
about, 30 minutes or so to proof the bread, especially one that is sweeter. But in this situation, I don't have that, so I am just going to cover it with plastic wrap, and then I'm going to stick one in my little drawer under the oven just to see if that's warmer, and I'm going to stick one on top of my warmed oven to see which one works out better. So a proof box essentially is a closed warmer that has some humidity in there, so there is some water that is essentially steaming your bread a little bit, and it makes it rise really, really well.
All right, guys, so it looks like the one that I ended up putting on top of the oven proofed faster than the one that was in the little drawer under the oven. So this one is the one that I am going to bake first, and put the other one on top of the oven while this one is baking so that it can catch up. So this took about 2 hours to get some proof on it. It is February, so my kitchen in my house is a little bit colder even with the heater on. So it just took a little while, but I didn't have anything else to do, so worked out great for me. We're going to put it in the oven at 335 degrees according to the recipe for about 35 minutes or so. I'll probably check on it at the 30-minute mark and then go from there. So the recipe does have some notes. It has storage. Of course, with bread, you definitely want to serve it same day, but if not, 2 to 3 days room temp or up to 1 week in the airtight container or plastic wrap would be ideal because nobody wants dried bread. You can freeze for 2 to 3 months. Keep it stored in an airtight container. Then it actually talks about the instant yeast and the variations they did. I did mine a little bit different, but you can always follow that. Refrigerating the dough overnight. Like I said, if you want to refrigerate overnight, then it will have a slow rise in the fridge. And then more filling ideas, cream cheese filling with strawberry filling. You got cherries, blueberry pie filling, apple pie filling. There's all sorts of different things. If you don't have the colored sugar, you can make it as well. This one says granulated sugar. I suggest sanding sugar or a coarser sugar. I think it doesn't clump as much. And so I think that's personally better for the sugar if you're going to make it, and you just put a little bit of food coloring in it. I had to dig deep for the green. This was the last one at Kroger, but I got the green, and then I got purple, and then I ended up having to make the yellow with some sugar that I had. So that was pretty easy. So it looks like it took about 38 minutes to bake. So if it registers at 190, then you are good to go. And it looks like we are. So this looks amazing. So we have the green, purple, and gold. So you're going to apply it in sections. And then green. All right, here is the second one that we're going to temp. I did this one for 30 minutes and it is good to go. We'll see if we like the 30-minute one or the one that was 38 minutes. This is the second king cake, the cinnamon one. That looks really good. This is the final product. That looks gorgeous. So let's cut this baby. Serrated knife, sawing motion. Pretty simple. That looks so good. I'm gonna cut. Usually you don't want to cut bread straight from the oven You want to give it time to relax a little bit and cool, and it's structured to set up, but this is just too awesome not to cut.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed my video. Thank you guys for your patience. I am very new to YouTube. I can edit really well in TikTok, Instagram, but YouTube videos, things that are longer, are a little more difficult. It is definitely not easy trying to explain things and then videotape things and then stop the video and then have to edit the videos. It does take a lot of work. So I hope you guys got something from it. I know it looked like at the beginning the salt was missing. I actually did put it in with the water. And I know I talked a lot about putting the butter inside the roll excessively, but just things like that, you know, I'll learn moving forward, of course. The next time I think I do, since I don't have a proof box, I think I do want to proof it overnight in the refrigerator and try that. And that probably would help a lot with the time. It took me a really long time to videotape everything. I mean, I think I started like in the morning and then was just trying to do everything throughout the day, and then I didn't finish until nighttime. So I think, and just with everything taking longer, like I said, it being February. Also, I know you probably heard me sniffling in the video. It is allergy season and my allergies are bad. I do live in Virginia, so anyone who lives in Virginia knows the pollen count is ridiculous, even in February. Okay, my 3-year-old is looking for me, so I have to make this quick. As always, per tradition, please like and subscribe to my video. At Sweet Chef Pastries, of course, is my handle. And thank you guys again for watching. So until the next time,